upon us to call the January meeting to order.
Sorry, this is...
Okay. The first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda.
Could I see that, please?
Oh, I didn't sign it. One sec.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay,
I'll second it.
a second. Very good. And I believe we go to all in favor, or do we have discussion? Do we have any discussion on this? Mr. Prince?
I have a question from a facilities update.
Yes.
Jim Croak attended a securities panel, and the mention was made of Narcan to deal with opioid overdoses.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that the library has?
No,
And
not
is
yet.
that something that we need to explore?
Right, we don't have it yet. I talked to the chief. I've talked to the chief of police and the fire chief repeatedly about various things like safety in the library and whether or not we should have a defibrillator. And because the police station is so close, they feel that emergencies would be taken care of. I mean, it takes just minutes. By the time somebody runs from one floor to another around here trying to figure out where a defibrillator is, they could be here. In case of Narcan, it's different. And there's a library program where we can apply to get Narcan, although I think the police department would supply it. Chief Brooks thinks that it's a good idea and he wants to go forward with it, but we haven't really moved anything past that. It was right before Christmas,
Okay.
and I wrote to him, and so we've got some things to do. We need training and various other things. They're going to start training, CPR training town-wide. The library's going to be included in that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? No?
My Wi-Fi is secure.
Very good. We are happy to have secure Wi-Fi at the library. So, all in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. So moving right along to welcome and invitation to speak.
We do have a welcome over Casey. Everyone's met Casey. Okay, great. And so Casey's standing in for Marcia tonight.
Okay.
And then we have Kate Sheehan.
Very good.
Hi, Kate Sheehan.
The warrant is circulating for signatures. I believe everyone has signed it by this point.
Yes.
Very good. Correspondence. The materials challenge response letter. Everyone should have received a copy of this letter in their packet. Very nicely done. Thank you. Ms.
Yes.
Prince.
Yeah, very nicely done.
Welcome.
Kate Ty has a copy, and the book is back down in Children's. So
Okay.
they'll be. I don't believe they're going to put it on the parents' shelf. I think they're just they won't be using it in
Story time.
story time.
Okay.
And they will probably advise if they see somebody. But there are I didn't realize this, but there are many books in the Skippy John Jones series.
Oh, lots.
Oh,
of
you know
books.
this, okay.
Yes.
Right.
We have read many of the books
So
in
it's a
that series.
yeah, book. It's popular.
That they are.
We also received, through Stewart and the Monahan Fund, we received $5,000 gift from the Simone Fund once again, and Sarah signed a thank you letter. And Stewart has written a thank you letter, and the Literacy Department has written a thank you letter once again.
Very good. And we greatly appreciate
Yes.
their contributions.
Yes. Thank you for the partition.
Yes. Okay, so moving right along to old business, update on capital projects.
Well, tomorrow is a pre-bid meeting, tomorrow morning, pre-bid for the chiller.
Okay.
Kathy Carney has invited Mr. Paul Ward to attend if he has any interest. And that the pre-bid is when all the, it's been put on the register and all the companies that are interested come to look at the lay of the land and to ask any questions.
Okay.
And Jim will be there. Kathy will be there, and I don't know if the engineers will be there. I think they probably will. And then the bids are open is open for a short period of time. We should have something. And it's scheduled to be done by May, so
Excellent.
Okay.
hoping
We shall remain optimistic.
hoping they can start the deconstruction soon.
Indeed.
Oh, and I did submit to Tony Mizuko today. He wanted a blurb about each year's capital projects coming forward, which would be 20, 21, and 22, which would be the RFID, the LED lighting, and the painting, and he has those, and those will be included in some paperwork for town meeting members.
Okay. Mr. Prince.
You're prompting me to think about something, Charlotte, as we sort out the timing of replacing the chiller. Is there any reason they can't remove the wooden encasement around the chiller now, or is it just waiting for the outside bidder to do that as well as the replacement?
Probably, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that will be included. I'm sure it is. And the new fences it will have, what am I trying to say?
Sound
baffling.
Sound baffling and everything else. So we're hoping not to have any issues with that. But I think that will be all part of the project. I imagine they'll start in April, because if they want a mid-May startup, they'll be starting quickly to get it done.
Okay.
And you've noticed the windows in the back. Everybody noticed those beautiful windows that replaced we think they were probably 1928.
Wow.
28 windows that were there before, and it's just great. And Jim took care of the wall, which was eroding.
Mhm.
All the plaster was coming off. It was all mold, and he went in there and took care of it. So it's in great shape. So that wasn't actual capital money, but that was money from municipal relief last year.
Great.
So all that rain over the holidays is not in our building.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. And moving on, continuing with the noise concerns, noise in the library and teen behavior.
Well, I haven't had any reports. I'll be going to ALA at the end of the month, and I will be looking at there are lots of exhibitors, and I'm hoping to find something that I can take a look at as far as the study pods that we're talking about. And Paul Pazniokis is very excited about it. So
Very
as soon as we
good.
get back, we'll move forward with that. And the first thing the staff has to do is some weeding. And they're actually, we talked about it at the staff department head meeting today, and they're very excited to get started on
Excellent.
Getting some space.
Sounds like we have some good momentum with that then.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, reports, personnel report.
Under old business, B should be.
Oh, B.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
B is missing.
B is missing, and B is personnel matters.
Okay,
I see.
personnel matters. I believe we have some,
Executive session.
yes.
Well, right. So we have to say why we were going into executive session.
We have a letter that has arrived from our attorney.
Town council.
From town council regarding some personnel reclassifications.
Okay. So I move that we discuss this matter in executive session because it pertains to individuals and their employment with the town and the library. And because that's an item of sensitive nature, I move that we go into executive session at the end of this open meeting, and we will discuss that there.
And return.
That's our line.
Oh.
And after that, we will return to open session exclusively for the purposes of adjournment.
Good.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, yes. Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Ms. Pipes? Ms. Henry? Ms. Cummings?
Oh, yes, I.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Very good. Thank you.
You have
So-
instructions on how to do this.
What?
I'll leave you instructions on how to do this.
We'll need help,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
You could just sit in the corner.
I sit in the corner on a regular basis, Ms. Cummings, usually with my nose facing the wall.
No, you can turn around.
How
Okay,
generous
so
of you.
moving on to reports, are there any other personnel things to report?
No, we're fully staffed. And
Yay!
I haven't received any resignations of any kind, or no one seems to be moving on to greener pastures or anything like that. So everything's just great because everyone's just screaming along. Although we have so many new staff members, we find in the department head meeting that we have to go back and explain various things that happen, like the pajama fundraiser.
Mm.
Some of our new staff had no idea what that was all about today, so we gave them a little rundown about our competition with Bourne.
Okay. Ms. Cummings?
Well, since you're talking about the pajama thing again, last year, someone had mentioned what if we would go to one of the corporations in Boston, in Norwood, and ask them to help fund. Was there any?
We haven't gone forward on it because we just registered today, but I think that we will definitely try to do that. I know Tony Mizuko, because his mother works in Bourne, and Bourne is the one that wins every year.
Is there anything he can do about that for us?
Unfortunately, no, because Mass Maritime is
yes,
the big
right.
funder. They collect, but we are going to reach out to different people. Somebody mentioned today that we should reach out to Costco and BJ's, and that they may be willing to, because they have a lot of kids' pajamas, there. But they are denim companies, so we're not really sure. But we're going to do a little bit more of that this year. Try to get.
Well, I believe
We
that
do have benefactors in the halls, so.
the biggest employer of record, at least within recent years, is Analog Devices.
Which just moved out,
which
right?
has moved out. Okay.
Right.
We may want to try to reach out to the service organization at the high school
Right.
and see if we can encourage some cooperation within the schools, or just reach out to the superintendent in general to get word out to the schools themselves as
Right.
possibilities, because you've got a large base there.
Right.
Would there be any way we could just call it the auto mile from Norwood and ask everyone on the auto mile to
Well, that'd be
pitch
great.
in?
Yeah.
You know,
We have
and-
to stick with the Boston Bruins idea because it's the Boston Bruins
Right.
that are doing this.
Well-
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be a great idea. And
Somebody
yeah,
from
we'll-
not just go to each one, but say we want to say the auto mile in Norwood did this
Could be.
instead of
Great idea.
yeah, and then you won't have to. It could just be one.
We'll see
account.
what we get, what we can, what kind of interest we can get.
Yeah.
There are a couple of sports bars, and there are a couple of sports clothing memorabilia stores
That the Bruins
that the
would-
Bruins
yeah.
connection might work for.
Mhm.
There's Brenner's downtown, which has been a children's clothing store forever, but my understanding is that they're down to Boys and Girl Scouts, and that's it now. So I
The
don't-
christening,
Yeah, they
christening,
have
first
more.
communion, that kind of thing. He's speaking here, by the way, twice. He was so popular they had to open up another session.
Oh, good.
I think he's in his 90s. He's a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Aaron's a
we're gonna
presenting
start
guy.
reaching out. I talked about it at the department head meeting at town hall this morning. People were excited. We did put a box down there last year. So we're going to. We may have a really hard time beating Bourne because there are so many more than we have ever collected. So
Mhm.
I think about 1,000 more. I mean, it's very hard to reach that when they have Mass Maritime helping them. But we can. Well, we'll move forward. Maybe we'll take baby steps and do better this year, and then, every year. So, but we appreciate the fact that you have put us on the map, made us second.
That's right, John.
We'll try to keep the base high, and we can build on the base.
Right.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay. Friends of the Library.
The membership monies continue to come in.
Flow.
Very good.
Yeah, they're just coming in every day. Casey can attest to that.
Yeah,
Envelope
Made a
after
deposit today.
What what else? We have our next Friends Board meeting the 16th, so a week from tomorrow.
Is that at Little Bird again?
I believe it's going to be at Nappertandy's.
Nappertandy's.
Yep. 7:30, so come one and all. And yeah, just handed in some checks tonight for programming and outreach and literacy hospitality and
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
sure.
Couple things on that. For next year, you might want to think about whether you want to have premium levels even higher than the ones you got.
Oh, for the membership fees, the
Mhm.
dues.
And you might want to see whether you want to tweak the body copy so that it pushes premium memberships. My wife actually has some professional experience with that kind of form and letter writing, and I'm sure she'd be glad to consult if you want to go that route.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nothing keeps us to the third sheet, which is we have sheets cut in thirds and we insert them in the light bill. We could put a full sheet in. It would be the cost of, 3 times the cost of the printing, because it'd be 3 times paper, but that might be a really good idea next year to sort of really do a different kind of appeal. But it's very interesting. We always did it in September.
Yeah.
And something happened and we didn't
Something
get the
happened.
September. And so Dan wrote and asked for December, and December has been just terrific. We've gotten just terrific response from, a lot of seniors, a lot of the, the inexpensive memberships, but there are many of them, so adds up.
Okay. Programming report. Everyone had an opportunity to read through the incredible amount of programming from the month of December.
Yes.
There's a lot on the calendar already.
It's
For the
really
next
hard
2
to
months.
it's hard to get the Simone room, that's for sure.
Well, kudos to the library. It's definitely one of the ongoing strengths. And
Yeah, they do a great job in, children's and adult services. They
Yeah. just
keep us humming. And varied programs. It always amazes me. Tomorrow night, of course, we're Together Yes has paired up with us for years now, and the program tomorrow night on I don't know the name of it. Introduction to Muslim Religion, or does anybody know what the name of that
I
is?
believe it's Islam in America.
Islam in America. That's what it is, and it's headed towards a full house, which is just terrific. So.
Very good. New business. Mr.
Yes.
Hall.
I just wondered if we wanted to do any follow-up on a couple of intriguing emails that came around. One was about on the census, where Charlotte had passed on something that a colleague had suggested libraries might become more involved in helping people with the changes that are coming to the 2020 census on how you submit your information. And the other was Cashman's email regarding the social worker and the library that was looking into ways to help with homeless situation.
Well, they've had social workers in the major California city libraries for quite some time, several years now. Portland, I think, Seattle, many of the really big city libraries have had social workers. It's we all try to just do our part, and ease the situations that come up. I can't envision, we work with Riverside and whatnot, but it is interesting, especially, I urge you all to watch, I think January 29th, the library, Emilio Estevez's movie, not the library, it's called The Public, is coming out, which is really going to be fascinating for people to watch, I think, to see how a library reacts to homelessness and whatnot. So if you get a chance to see it, definitely. I bet you Dedham Community Theater will definitely have it on there. 'Cause they show a lot of independent kind of stuff. And then as far as the ALA, we were involved in the last census in 2010. The Census Department came and they gave us materials. They tried to get us involved as much as we could. This year, of course, as you read, there's going to be a huge online component to the census that's never been. It wasn't. I don't believe there was enough that you could do it online last year. A decade ago, in 2010. So we will be involved. They'll be reaching out to us. They may be waiting because of the shutdown right now. I don't really know. I'm surprised that they haven't reached out to us already.
Well, there's a controversy going on with respect to the census over the attempt of some people in the administration to stick in citizenship question as a device for flagging and ejecting still more immigrants. And that may be holding up the whole schedule. But if it in fact does go in, it could create a crisis of conscience for locals that want to help with the system.
And then there's a problem of people who are afraid to report. So, I'll keep you posted on both of those issues. There's not much, we're not going to be able to hire a social worker, but we try to do as much professional development in that area as possible. We've had staff. Well, a good example is sending Jim to the program that he went to in Wellesley, because that particular author who I saw at a program somewhere, a conference in the last year, really speaks to that and speaks to the issues and how to figure out when an incident is getting out of control that you need professional help with.
Ms. Guys?
When John and I went to that annual meeting of the Mass Libraries Association,
The trustees.
in November, they had a speaker come. She was the director in Quincy, and they had an armed shooter come into the library, and
They had the training.
yes.
Yes. And we have done that.
Yeah, and so she gave us a lot of resources about that, and many of them had to do with opioid training and homelessness at the same time. So I just brought these resources that she gave us
Okay, thanks.
to look at. You may have already had them.
Yep. There are a lot of them that we've been.
And she also said that she would be glad to come to speak at the library, and she's spoken at many libraries, and she was an excellent speaker. And one of the reasons I think she was such an advocate was because she's been to so much training herself. But they also had an episode at that library where somebody came in and was armed. And they had the training, all of the staff, and so it went very smoothly for them, and the person wasn't armed with a gun, he was armed with several knives. And although it was powerfully dangerous and upsetting and everything went well, and the staff there felt empowered by their training. But anyways, just in case you want to look at that.
Yep, it would probably be a good thing. We have so many new staff since we did the training before. At the time, we did many things. I don't know if you've ever noticed that all the doors have big numbers over them, which Jim did. We have a lock on the back door. We did lots of things so that we could be safe, but we have a lot of new staff, so it's a good thing. It would be smart for me to call down there and have somebody come in, one of the.
It's also, they were saying it's also good for the signage to say to the patrons, go to door 2. It's not just good for the people that work in the library or that are familiar with the library, but it's good for them, for the signage. And it also, she said that the active shooter training is online. They had an excellent, I didn't write it down, I wrote it down, I
It's
can't
the
read my
Department
own
of
writing. Yes, Homeland Security.
Homeland, not homeless.
But she said, one thing she said is that you should have drills and practice with the police. You may already do that, I don't know.
We did
Active
a
shooter
few
training,
years ago.
self-defense, de-escalation of crisis situations. With the health department on bloodborne pathogens, the AED, and recognition and response to mental illness. With social workers, this is with the staff. With social workers with dementia training, hygiene issues of patients, how to approach them nicely and get through to them. Homeless clients issues, how to get them to report to the social worker. And then she spent a lot of time, since it was a trustees meeting, saying, how can trustees help with security issues? And she said that it's our job to understand that these issues are going to happen more and more because, people come here when they're homeless and when they have issues because there's really no place for them to go. You already know that, you know that. But it's like a day at the Boston Library in town is just overwhelming to see how much of that is. And then if you go back a month later, the same people are there. It's just so to understand that, to encourage the staff and say, you did a great job. If you see them do something, to support them and to advocate for support for monies for training for them above and beyond, because most of the monies that is allocated for the staff is for training for what they do in the library. And this is a new. Go ahead.
Well, no, I absolutely agree with everything you're
You know,
saying.
that we should try to get them more money for this somehow. I don't know, but
Well,
it's
We could definitely spend some state aid money on training
Yeah.
the staff. Yep.
because when that woman Meg Allen she liked to be called Meg, but I didn't call her anything because I didn't talk to her. But she said it was just a good feeling knowing that her staff was not totally unprepared. So that was one thing she said. It was great.
Good. Well,
I think you were going to pass out copies of that, Mark.
Oh, that too.
Well, yeah, there were other discussions.
Ms. Prince?
I had occasion to learn this week just how extensive the homeless population and resources for them are at Norwood Hospital. And I think we probably are in an interesting position because we're so close to the hospital that we might be spared some of what you experience in more urban environments. And you can talk about Boston. I remember even years ago, San Francisco Public Library, especially right after they built the new building and when I was just there as a patron. So I know that these are issues, and I feel obliged to repeat something I said years ago when we were last discussing security. I mean, I absolutely hate that this is now a thing that schools and libraries and public spaces have to go through active shooter training. But you're right, this is something that I think will continue, given the culture in which we live and the direction in which it seems to be heading. So I think you're right that we do need to do some more active preparation, and especially with staff turnover. I do regret that we are in that situation as a society, as an open space. But you're right.
Especially with 6 new staff just this year, we really need to.
So I was thinking about it, and once a year you close the library and the staff is dispersed to different libraries or different areas of Massachusetts to, enhance their knowledge of what's going on in the Commonwealth and within library. I think maybe it would behoove us to think about taking a day or a half a day or however you want to do it, if we would say and spend it on this, to have the fire, the health, and the social work department come in to address this, to get all of your staff at once. It would be cost effective, and you would all get the same training. It's a necessity in this day and age, and if somebody could take a line at the resources and get something prepared for it, I think that as trustees, we should think about making a motion to have that come as something that we want to do for the librarians and the staff to make them.
We could set out a Friday up in advance.
Yeah.
We're closed until 10, we could be closed until noon. I think 4 hours might be about right. Anything longer than that
Yeah.
is, but that's a really great idea to have Chief Brooks and his team come in and Segal and do a sort of a health day for the library.
And then they could do online training on certain times during the day when they have downtime, and pass in their marks or pass in the completion of their online training also.
You might consider inviting the fire chief, because they have the ambulance service and
The AEDs.
and a lot of responsibilities that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Well, they do the AED training, and so,
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
that is
important.
actually, they're
Yeah.
doing that town-wide,
yeah.
both the CPR and the AED. They're starting that in every department. They
So
announced that today.
I'm not sure of how we go about that, but.
Well, I think getting a speaker in at the same time, other than just just the chiefs and that would be a really good morning, well spent.
I wonder if some of this couldn't actually be done town-wide with the town fire, the town police, because it's going to impact the library, but also town
Well, they
hall.
are doing they're getting ready to do an active shooter day over at town hall.
So maybe we could combine some of our training, but I think getting the more specialized dealing with these issues in the context of the library would also be quite helpful.
Yeah. The town hall is also very vulnerable,
Right.
Sure.
My
So-
suggestion would be to place it carefully if you're going to be closing the library for more hours, so that it does not have a negative impact on our college population or our high school population who do utilize the library for their studies when it gets close to the end of the semester.
Yeah,
So sooner rather than later,
Right,
or
right.
push it
Maybe-
out a little bit further so that it isn't,
Maybe
of-
in April, that
Yeah.
would be a good time. So we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that with the staff. We'll try to come
Okay,
up with a
very
date.
good.
And I'll reach out to Meg Allen. And we'll, we're ready for, I had talked to the chief, we're ready for a new, we've all watched the movie several times, the Homeland Security. Hide, Run, Hide, Fight. There are 4 of them actually. So anyway, okay.
okay, very
And
good.
thank you for that, because that was in the minutes that you were going to prepare this
Well,
report
these are
for
the
us.
minutes right here.
Yes, good.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Cummings.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I guess that kind of encompasses new-ish business.
Oh, I have one more thing. Are we in new business?
Yes.
Can I just
We
mention
are
one
in
more
new
thing?
business.
One thing that they discussed also was that from last year to this year, they had a big meeting about the number of people that were in the association. So the balance of the treasurer's report was up $271, but dues were down over $1,000, and that was because any trustees had left, and the new trustees hadn't signed up, and some
And
trustees...
I always send that in for you, but they have not been sending out anything to me. And I looked for that so that I can send that in for you, Marguerite, because we do that for the trustees.
Okay,
Yep.
All
So
All right.
you can give those to me.
okay.
We actually sign everybody on, it's a board membership.
Yeah.
And we've done that every year, as
Well,
you
thank you.
remember.
Mhm.
But they don't send anything out, they don't in print anymore. And for some reason, I don't seem to be on the.
Well, maybe that's why it's down so much. Maybe they didn't send it out.
Yep.
Yeah,
That might be a
okay.
good reminder to them when you send the form in.
They used to always send us a brochure. We used to get it in the mail. And I don't get anything online. So I will sign everybody up. The entire board is $100. That's what we've always done in
It's
the
a-
past.
yeah, that's what it is.
At the meeting itself, there were a number of people who wanted to do something more but didn't know whether they were members. And it wasn't completely clear that the officers knew whether they were members. So I think that what you're describing is perhaps the tip of a larger iceberg of not close tracking.
Well, people that were on the board had retired, and when they left, they left. And they left. So it was a whole left about none of the paperwork was
Right.
forwarded.
And part of the problem is when I send this in, it gets sent in and there's no follow-up, so you don't receive anything to let you know that you're a member, so.
Well,
it's-
we
Well,
also-
They had been sending us the mailings.
Yeah, and they
There
stopped
are
the
emails
mailings.
that come out, but I
Yeah.
don't believe they have a print
Everything
magazine
is on the
any longer.
email
Okay.
now. Everything comes out on the email.
Maybe that's because we haven't been officially registered.
No, I get
No,
emails.
I
get
Oh, I get the
Impression.
emails, yeah.
Yeah, they come fast and furious every week. Lots of, have you read this? Yep.
I thought that when they were giving a recap of the recent history, I believe they mentioned that they had dropped
Okay.
their print.
Yeah.
So
So you can just read this, the rest of the stuff there on your own. There's no sense in me
you
reading
very
to
much.
you.
I'm glad you two went.
Yes.
Moving right along
Nice
to
meeting
number
with John.
8, if we don't have other new business.
Sorry.
Were there any search warrants?
There were no search warrants.
No search warrants. Alas. Miscellaneous advisories.
None?
None, okay. Staff or public remarks? Do either of our staff members here this evening wish to remark?
Casey?
No, no remarks.
Any books, any reading? What are you
Book
reading?
suggestions?
Oh, I'm reading a book right now that Marge recommended called The Lost Vintage by Anne Ma, M-A-H. And I've just started it, but it takes place in the present day. A woman from the United States travels to her family's vineyard in France, where she discovers a mystery, a lot of secrets, a love interest, and it goes back and forth between World War II and the events at the vineyard then and the present day. But so far, so good.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Okay. Casey?
I'm enjoying a book right now. It's called The Book of Unknown Americans. And it is about a family of Mexican Americans that come to America in the 90s, and everyone in their apartment building. It's multiple narrators. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. So far, so good.
Very good. Thank you. Trustees' remarks. I'll go the other direction this time. Mr. Hall.
Well, I didn't have anything, but my wife was eager to send in recommendations, and so I'm bearing hers. She has been very much into young people's books that she thinks are good for every age. And so I've got a couple things to suggest. There is a series, the Morrigan Crow series, and Casey, I'm going to leave you these sheets so you don't need to.
Thank you.
By Jessica Townsend. And in the description of the books, Jean has now read 2 of them. It says, perfect for fans of the Harry Potter series, which is probably all most people would need to know to be at least intrigued. The other is a book called Sweep, the story of a girl and her monster. And Jean thought it was surprising that this one was pegged at so young an age group, because it's got some very emotional scenes that might be hard to process if you're encountering them by yourself as a child.
It's a lot of juvenile
It's like
literature.
that.
Yeah, especially YA.
Mm.
Really tough subjects.
Well, it's it also she thought it was good enough to recommend that also.
Okay, good.
I'll pass those down to you, Charlotte.
Whoops. Ms. Cummings?
All right, a couple. Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk by Kathleen Rooney. And it was a great little story about this woman in her 80s, and she was independent until she fell in love, and then she became a little bit dependent until she got divorced. Then she went back to being very independent, and but she still loved her husband. She had a son. But she took this walk when she was in her 80s, and she lived in New York, and it was on New Year's Eve by herself at 11 o'clock to midnight. And it was just amazing that she would do that. And she met many people, and she was never frightened, but they robbed her, and they stole her mink coat, and they had another person, and everything happened to her. And she was like, give us your coat. Oh, sure, are you cold? Now, what's your name, and where did you go to school? And she was so nice. I fell in love with her. And at the end, she got home, and she was having a glass of brandy, and she was just thrilled that she took that walk. And she was so nice and feisty, and she was grand. And it sort of reminded me of an Ann Tyler story, where the person was just, didn't really realize how different they were. She was just great. So she was she was great. And the other one was A Fisherman's View by this man named Mike Bernard, and he went to BC High, and then he went to Providence College, and he lives in Medfield. So I thought, well, this would be a Mike Bernard.
Ooh, that might be fun to have.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a great little story. It was
The use of the subjunctive is omen flashing.
I thought.
It was a story that if I was sitting at a bar in Southie, I would have heard. So it was a good story.
Was it salty?
Well, yeah, it was, as a matter of fact. Not like a true story from. It was a story before happy hour in a Southie bar. But it was good.
Oh, good. Okay.
Ms. Connelly?
I'm reading a book on hoopla, actually. Dot journaling, how to start and keep the planner, to-do list, and diary that'll actually help you get your life together. By Rachel Wilkerson Miller. I don't know if you all know about this phenomenon called dot journaling. Does everybody know about it?
It's the same as bullet journaling.
Bullet journaling,
okay.
yeah. Bullet journaling and dot journaling are the same thing, and it's kind of it's a combination of a diary, planner, and to-do list. It sort of supplements a paper calendar, because my daughter thinks I'm a Luddite because I have to have a paper calendar. And it's really, it's been pretty fascinating. I had to wait, couldn't get my life together until it came from Amazon. But it's kind of been fun to sort of get things organized. There's an index in the front. That's one of the most important components, is that the pages are dotted, so that you can kind of get things in order, and they're also numbered, and there's an index in the front, so that when you, in your sort of free flow journaling diary stuff throughout the year, you put in the very beginning, you put the pages. Like, for instance, I put all of the blogs that I love, all of the podcasts that I love on a page, and there's an index. And all the pages that you do that on, you would have the index. It's really it's how my mind works. So this is really great that I have come across this. So I'm reading the book and doing it at the same time, and I would recommend it. There are other librarians in the library who have actually been doing it. It seems to be a librarian thing. It's been mentioned a lot lately. So I'll let you know how it goes. And I'm sure you got my email about my grand jury duty. So this kind of came at a good time because I feel very, a little panicked in feeling that I need to really get my life together before that might happen in April, May, and June. So anyway, that was what I'm reading.
Ms. Henry?
I am reading The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. And it continues my my unhappy books, but it's good. The main character is a woman who is serving 2 life sentences. It's fiction. 2 life sentences in a California prison, and just it talks about her early life. I'm still I kind of know why she's in there, but I think I'm going to learn more. It's good, but sometimes I sit there and think, gosh, should I really be reading this? This is, kind of depressing, but it's good. But it's and then just, other characters who are kind of connected to her who are also in prison, and I think it makes me a little claustrophobic too, because I think of she's in like a windowless cell, and just the whole that just what that whole experience must terrible experience must be like. But that aside, it's good. I recommend it.
It sounds like good writing to
It
create
is.
that kind of vivid feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna stay on the straight and narrow.
Good.
Just keep on the straight and narrow these days. Yeah.
I was going to
Oh, no.
recommend that.
Yeah. No more living on the edge. So.
That's right, clean up
Yeah,
your
I
act.
know.
And on that note, let's Ms. Pipes.
I also did a true crime,
Okay.
but mine was true crime.
Oh, okay.
So it was called "I'll Be Gone in the Dark."
Oh, yeah.
What was it? One woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
It was a 10-year reign of terror.
Yeah, there was actually one of the staff commented on that in our staff book discussion group, and then of course the epilogue isn't in the book of what actually happens to her.
Well, the woman who wrote it, Michelle McNamara, passes away
Right.
while she's writing it.
Right.
So the
But they don't mention
epilogue.
that, right? They
They-
don't mention it in the book.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they do.
They do, because there is a part of it that's written by
Okay.
afterward by some people piecing together her notes.
Okay. Oh, I know what it is. They don't mention that the killer gets found.
And he does get found.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
you find out like when you look into it a little more. But it was very good, which caused me to
Look into it.
Look
a
Look
little
into
bit.
it a little more. And I guess it's going to be on HBO is picking it up.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then I did one light one. It was on one of the romance lists. It was called The Hating Game. It's adorable. And that one was by
Who's that one?
Sally Thorne. The Hating Game.
Who's by who?
Sally
You know-
Thorne.
Oh, Sally
a
Thorne.
romance novel.
Yeah.
It's also called The Hating Game.
Yeah, it was so adorable.
We should
But
read
I gotta switch it up. I can't just read all that true crime stuff.
We should read that book.
I need
Right.
some-
I know, we need that. We need that.
I need some fiction. So
Well,
That's it.
if it's a poor person game, I mean, yeah.
Read The
Fill out the
Fisherman's View,
form.
that's a cute little story. That's great.
Mr. Prince.
So I am reminded, especially Debbie, with you talking about what you were reading, of a book that I read a few years ago that has stayed with me, which you might enjoy, called Room by Emma Donahue.
Oh, yeah.
I read that.
Claustrophobia.
I recommend, yeah. So it's the
Good
story
movie.
told mostly from the point of view of the 5-year-old of a boy and his mother who were held in a room for a long period of time, and it's inspired by a true story. And they're confined to a room called Room. And this child's earliest memories are of the room where he lives, and that's where it starts.
Thank you.
It's very
Vivid.
beautifully written, very vivid. I think it's a very
You like
good
claustrophobia?
novel.
Yeah.
But
Which I don't really.
It has stayed
But-
with me through the years, so you might enjoy that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other more current reads?
That'll do for now.
That'll do for now. Okay. Well, over the holidays, I picked up The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. And it's kind of a science fiction fantasy type book that involves a lot of librarians,
Really?
go figure, who are part of this central library, but there are connections to all these other worlds through the library. So again, the science fiction fantasy side of things is very enjoyable, and they have to go try to find different books and solve different capers so far. So I have not finished it yet, but it is definitely a very enjoyable read and kind of put some twists in your mind as to the possibilities of alternate realities and everything else out there. So I would recommend that.
Great.
Okay.
May I?
Mr. Hall.
I'm wondering how many people have followed the now completed miniseries, The Librarians, which I think was based on one or more books.
Well,
Yeah.
I believe that it was originally, maybe it was based on books, but it was also based on 3 movies, which
Yes.
we have all in
Yes.
our library collection here at the Morrill Memorial
Yes.
Library.
You at home should take particular note of this. Yeah, it got more involved as it went along, and what started off as a sort of immortal librarians charter to protect things that were extremely rare and potentially dangerous. Think of Doctor Strange as another example. And then it turned into like protecting the timeline, I think, at some point late in the run. And, but they were all called librarians. It was like if you said the word, people who knew what you were talking about were instantly hushed and worshipful. And I'm thinking, this is the kind of world that real librarians would like to see. You just say what you are and you get this reaction.
Excellent. Okay. So, it is time for us to move from our regularly scheduled meeting into executive session.